Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This week, we are discussing Season 2 DS9, because the whole season as a whole in one little package. Another place you can get the package, follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Tricked Before. Spelled just like it sounds. It's All Been Tricked Before. Got a lot of funny memes. We keep you posted on where we are on our trek. And jump in there with us. Tell us what you think on the old Facebook. And it's not just for old people, but it might be. But anyway, follow us. It's All Been Tricked Before on Facebook. Follow this, our discussion of Season 2 of Deep Space Nine on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Some of your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome. Keith hopefully will be joining us soon, but we're going to start without him. We are here to wrap up Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 2. First impressions of the second season.
Great season. As you know, if you listened to the last several weeks of when we've discussed DS9, great run at the end of the season, and a lot of good episodes during the season as well. Yeah, really good season. Really building on the first season, obviously jumping off. Yeah, lots of advances in storyline, characters, everything, and just a lot of great and solid episodes, and then a few not so great, but yeah. But I think the batting average is pretty good in this season, especially that last half was.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 7 of the last 8 episodes are our top 7, of the season. Only Tribunal, which was the penultimate episode, is a little further down, but not that far down. It's number 13 of 26 or whatever. So yeah, I thought it was definitely a step up from season 1. I think they're figuring out the characters better. I think it hit its stride quicker than Next Gen. I think it was definitely stronger than Next Gen was by season 2.
Yeah.
And you're starting to having the foresight of knowing what's coming. I do think they laid some of the groundwork this season to set up the rest of the series. So while we didn't get to a lot of that until arguably the season finale starts to play into the Dominion and stuff, but with the introduction of the Jem'Hadar, which great introduction in my opinion, and the Vorta. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a strong season of television. I think maybe stronger than all, but maybe 1 or 2 Next Gen seasons, I would say, just off the top of my head. I know we won't rank them against Next Gen necessarily.
Right.
We'll rank it against itself, but yeah, liked it a lot. Very promising, very excited to continue from here, knowing that I still think season 2 is the second worst season of the series from my memory. Season 1's the worst season, despite some really great moments in season 1. Season 1 was better than I remembered, but I think season 2 is probably the second worst. And if that's the case, then we're in good shape going forward.
Yeah, I can't think of a run, and it's not necessarily you don't have to have 7 great episodes in a row. We definitely had seasons of TNG that had 7 great and several good episodes like this, but that run definitely conveys it. And
the end of the season, so strong.
Yeah.
Keith has joined us. Keith, we are just still talking our first impressions of Deep Space Nine season 2. If you want to give yours,
my first impressions, I need to think about it. But
fair enough.
I need to remember to recall what exactly happened in which places and that sort of thing.
We got stuck on the ranking of the Jem'Hadar. We weren't sure if it belonged above or below Crossover, which was the Mirror Universe episode. So for the first time in a while, we said we'll defer to Keith.
It's our favorite game.
This is
the buck.
Yeah. That's the recency bias because I'm leaning toward Jem'Hadar right now.
Yeah. So above Crossover, I think I had it above and Steven wanted to go below, but I don't think I wanted to go any higher and Steven didn't want to go any lower. So we were in that zone.
Yeah.
Above Crossover is The Wire. Eric had The Wire in his brain.
Yeah, the greatest show ever.
That's all I can think of is the greatest show ever. Or I don't think either of those beat The Wire.
So we'll put Jem'Hadar at number 3. But what Steven and I were saying is we've ranked 7 of the 8 final episodes of the season as our top 7. We just thought the end run was so strong.
You were probably already saying something to this effect, but I think it's sort of speaks to the format or the what they're starting to do differently, or what they had set out to do differently, which is the serialization of it. So this is just you don't have to bother forcing in filler, episode of the week things. You know what I'm saying? Whatever.
Still plenty of filler all the way up into the final season, I think. But you're right that
It doesn't feel like it in that sense. It's, well, I mean, like filler in the sense of like this is, it accumulates in character development, that sort of thing, rather than it just being something for this person to do.
Right. Absolutely. So the Jem'Hadar, I know that was where we left off the season. Keith obviously knows a lot of what's coming. I know what's coming. Steven, where does that episode leave you thinking season 3 is going to go?
I know we've got the threads of, the Vivek win and all that, and then we've got the Maquis and how are they connected, the Jem'Hadar, and then the Dominion and all that. So I don't know. Which is
all of those threads will continue to be played out. The Bajoran politics, the Maquis, and the Dominion are all still ongoing threads into season 3.
Do we feel like, and I know we talked about this on certain weeks too, on some level, but was it us watching not a great finish to TNG at the same time we were watching a great finish to season 2 of DS9? Do you think one played out, like one made us rate the one lower and the other higher? I mean, it's human nature. But I wouldn't attribute all of it to that, but I think there might be a little element there.
Absolutely. When I think of DS9, I think of seasons 1, 2, and 3 being a slow build, and then 4 through 7 like shooting up in quality. Yeah. But given the absolute awesome quality season 2, I think may have been because we were comparing it so directly to Next Gen season 7, which sucked. I mean, it didn't suck, but it wasn't what that show deserved. It went out with a whimper, not a bang. Other than the finale. The finale was great. There were a couple great episodes in that final season, but overall the final season had a lot of stinkers in it.
Yeah.
More so than most of the other seasons of Next Gen.
If you're watching Sub Rosa and then you're watching The Wire, you can't help but be like, okay, this is really good and this is really bad, and but
I know we talked about season 1, Kira really stood out, and Odo and Quark also kind of stood out pretty strongly. What characters stood out for you in season 2? Of like good development really coming to the forefront?
Well, probably Bashir in a way, but that's
agreed. Agreed. He stopped being annoying midway through the season.
It still feels like we don't have enough Dax yet, but
it does. But I think we got a little bit more, and what we got was good.
Yeah,
we started to see her. She didn't necessarily get like a Dax focused episode that was good, but we started to see her relate, other than Blood Oath, of course, which was a great Dax episode, the Klingons. But we started to see her relationships with the other characters get more fleshed out. And by that extension, we got to know her a little better. She definitely had a better second season than first, but she's doing better than Crusher is in terms of focus.
Yes.
Even after 7 seasons. But she is still probably the least served of the main cast. I would say Cisco too. Cisco gets a little bit more in season 2, but it's in smaller chunks. I think season 1, he was a little more central, not as central as he'll come to be, but a little more central in season 1. I think he was a little less central in season 2, but when they used him well in season 2.
Yeah.
O'Brien gets a little bit better development in season 2.
Yeah. I thought Quark was used smartly, and that I don't think he was overused.
Like we got less of Odo and Quark, especially in the back half of the season, unfortunately.
Yeah. Like I feel like they could have just been like, thing we do, that Quark, but like Quark. But I thought they used him well. But yeah, I think it was less down the stretch. And I don't know if that was, we're getting into serious episodes or whatever. But he still adds levity or deviousness to a serious episode too. So sometimes you get in that thing where it's like, I'm going to use Seinfeld, although it's not a perfect example, but like, oh well, now Kramer's got to bust through the door all the time, and maybe a little too much kind of thing. Yeah. That's not the best example. I know there are plenty of other examples where the backup character kind of takes over the show.
That
good and bad.
Seinfeld is actually one of the things I think about, or probably one of the times when I came up with know if I would call it theory so much, as I noticed at probably season 2 or 3 of a show, not only because the audience is familiar with what's going to happen, the writers can play with things a bit, but it's the actors. I think they're still finding the voice of the character. And it's like they have a chance to go back and watch the previous season, and they start to become caricatures of themselves, like trying to. So it's like they're not even the same people. If you watch them side by side, but it's like they think that's this. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it becomes.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point, because I think Kramer for Seinfeld fans and everybody. It got to the point where if he came in the door, there was back in the day when they had laugh tracks or whatever, a big cheer.
Yes.
It would slow down the episode and everything. And then I feel like that happened a couple of the middle seasons, and then they stopped doing that, which was a good thing, I think. And I think to your other point, Keith, and now this is the Seinfeld podcast, but I think down the stretch, some of those later seasons after David left, however if you want to get into that argument, but I think some of the crazier episodes, they leaned into like, well, this is Crazy George, Crazy Kramer, Crazy Elaine, Crazy Jerry, and just went for it instead of half-weighing it. So for me, it still ends up working if you're in that headspace, even if they are caricatures, as opposed to, not that any of them are, well, they were definitely fully fleshed characters, just not, no drama there, obviously. No learning. So
it's that sort of thing is especially apparent in animated shows and so forth, because of the way the voice sounds. It boils down to something where it's like, first season 1 always sounds a little rough, and then suddenly this is the way that character is always going to sound. This is the way that if someone's doing an impression of the character, that's what it's going to sound like, that kind of thing.
Kind of like Family Guy is just not, in theory, they even say like, we're not even trying anymore. I mean, they are, but at least to me, I still watch every episode, but obviously it's a lot easier for them to just be like, we're just going to write this character this way. But anyway, back to Star Trek.
I think you're raising good points. I think had Quark stayed at this level throughout the series, we would find him a goofy caricature that we don't appreciate that much. But with the foresight, knowing that there will be good stuff for Quark coming, and he's not always going to just be used this way, I think they were still figuring out the dynamics of how to balance the ensemble. And I think as they started to go more serious and serialized this season, they weren't sure immediately where Quark fit into that. So instead, we get him in mostly these little goofy scenes, mostly with Odo, interacting. And later on down the road, then they'll actually realize where he fits in the ensemble, because when you turn this into a serious war show and politics show and religion show, which it's what it's becoming, it's not immediately obvious where Quark fits in and still contributes. But I will say I think they do a good job of eventually figuring that out. Rather than writing him out, they just find where he fits in.
Well, I was going to say that now that I have a chance to think about it, that's why I really like the Jebediah episode. I think that was
good use of Quark.
Yes, it was showing you where he's going to fit.
Yes.
There's something else. What was
and
it?
Nog.
Yeah.
I mean, Nog and Jake ended up turning pretty goofy in that episode, but I think we got some seeds of Nog in this that intrigued me a bit more, and tease why Nog ends up becoming so prevalent.
Okay, I thought of the other sort of ancillary part of what I was saying, that part of the theory of they're transitioning from having to apologize for Quark and Odo and all these other things in season 1. Well, it's like how you have to protect certain characters, and you're not allowed to let them show that kind of affection for each other. They have to keep sort of hinting at it and poking, going, oh, but no, not really. We don't want to admit this, or it's they're getting to the point where they can use the shorthand with the audience. The audience doesn't have to go through that charade every time, if that makes any sense. And so that's they're starting to build on that. The main characters are going to start to probably value Quark in more open ways than having to use the backhanded compliments and, well, I don't really want to save him, but that kind of thing.
We'll see the other character that's pretty underserved in the series, and it didn't pop out to me because I guess because he's only in like half the episodes of the season and of the series, is Jake Sisko. Like, he's unlike Wesley, because they didn't slot him into a bridge scene role where he'd be in all the stories. It's hard to fit him in, and especially now when he's a kid, he's got limited time on screen anyway. Whereas the actor that plays Nog is not a child, so they can use him as much or as little as they want. But Jake Sisko, eventually they find his own narrative path, but he never really fits in. I think he's different enough because he's not Starfleet, because he's not crew. He's never going to quite gel in with the ensemble. So he always feels a bit separate to me, even though he does remain a main character for all 7 seasons of the show. And they do have interesting stories with him. It just, half the time he's not going to be there because he doesn't fit in every story. And I think we see that in this season already, that separation. which is, good and bad, but we didn't want to turn into the Jake Sisko show either. That could really detract from what it's becoming. He's in the important episodes, I think, for the most part. So Jake and Ben's relationship remains a key part of the series. And I do wonder if they did it today, if Jake would have never been a main character. He was just somebody they used 8 times a season, maybe even less than they had before, or than they did. You end up using him because for the most part, it's serving the father-son relationship rather than he'll have his own stories, but I feel like it's almost always a little bit through the lens of his relationship with his father.
Yeah.
I'd say Kira remains my favorite character after season 2, but I don't think she got as much meaty material in season 2. What they gave her was mostly like the beginning of the season that I didn't love as much as like Duet. So I don't think she had quite as high in season 2, though I still liked her a lot. And she had a lot of good little moments.
Yes. Any
characters in the lead cast we're starting to build the reoccurring cast, because we've got Barayo, we've got Win, we've got Nog, we've got Garrick. We're going to get a lot more reoccurring characters, but those are all people we're going to see again. Ducat, of course. So I think we're starting to see some of the flavor of some of the other characters. Are there any characters that you are eager to see more of, or just wish they would go away?
I know we're not going to see Ben Casey again. I know that's not a character, but I'm just saying the actor. But we see more of the Maquis, so
we do, and it's kind of a shame that they didn't follow up with his character.
Yeah, and I know we're going to see Vedic win again, and
in Hater. Now she's Kai win. She won.
That's right. Yeah. So I know I'm going to love the Hater, and I usually am not a love to hate person. I just hate people. I'm not
hate to hate.
Oh, I don't love. I mean, I'm not a Vader. I'm a Vader hater. but her, and obviously since it's Louise Fletcher, she's always great, and she's so good in that part. So, but I know we'll see her.
Who do you want to see as the more central villain, Ducat or Win? Because Ducat's also deliciously awful.
Yes,
that's Win. I think Win reminds me of Planet Earth 2024 United States too much. So I think I'd rather see Ducat.
No, it's such a that's very strange. I have something there, and I can't quite express it in words yet, because we've talked about that before. All the parallels between fascist.
Bajor great again.
Yeah,
well, make Bajor great again.
Yeah, but I mean on both sides of that. So it's like Bajor is the good planet, that's the faction that you want to like, and Bajor, being more like this country, that's everything has to be much more insidious. There's always the machinations going on back there. They have to put a certain kind of face on it. On the other hand, you have the Cardassians, and they're more openly similar to like the evil dictatorships and so forth. And when you compare them directly to Nazi occupations and things like that, it feels inexcusable to want to like them at all. But the characters they use, you can't help but kind of want to like them.
Yeah,
and Ducat's a very good example of that. And so on the other side of the coin, you have Win, who you don't want to like. It's just that she's even putting on a much prettier face on what's happening, but you just know, and it's just that kind of
I think one big difference is Ducat's people follow Ducat pretty willingly, as far as we see it, at least at this point. Whereas Win follow willingly and know who he is. Like, they're okay with him doing the evil-y things he does, at least as far as we know. Whereas Win's people think she's somebody different than she is. She's sneakier about it at this point. Which begs the question, which one is Benjamin Netanyahu? Because he's not sneaky, but he's just... a lot of people would call him evil. I think with the parallels you make of Nazism and Israel today and leadership, it's really not direct parallels, but you start to see Bashor as Israel in a way. And that colors my opinion on this watch in a way that I wasn't thinking in earlier watches.
It's amazing how many. I was just thinking about this earlier today. I can rattle off at least 3 animes right now that just it doesn't make any sense how well they capture these kinds of political complexities. Probably without, maybe they meant to, maybe they didn't, but they're trying to describe just other kinds of social injustices, but it ends up being something that is like, oh, that is just for the. I remember early on when people were just starting to talk more in the mainstream about Palestine and Israel and what was happening. Somebody brought up to explain it Avatar: The Last Airbender. I believe there's something. It's something that happens in season 1. They meet one of the freedom fighters named Jet.
Yep.
And they use that as a metaphor, not what I'm saying, allegory for what's going on there, because it's someone who seems like they have, or they're sort of cloaking themselves in a righteous cause. Where there's this ill that's been done to us, and that gives me license to just go across the board and seek vengeance indiscriminately. And there's just a very quick, simple things like, oh, now I understand you.
Well, I don't know if we did it with DS9 yet, but I know with TNG there were some episodes that felt like they were dealing with the Mideastern conflict. Or actually, I guess, yeah, I know we've talked about this, because I know in one episode I started complaining. It's like, oh, well, it's another civil war. And I was like, wait a minute, there's probably 15 civil wars going on right now on our planet. So yeah, it makes sense that would be going on in the galaxy and everything. And because I'm trying to think, maybe this is our next special episode, but a lot of them I feel like are related to like the Yugoslav. Actually, it is the book, so we'll get into this next week as well, New Frontier. But I feel like that gets into like the Yugoslavian thing, which was just kind of starting to happen, which was turning into the Serbian Croatia thing after Yugoslavia broke down. Because some of the arguments in that book, and I should save it for next week. I'll try and save the rest for next week. But there are some arguments in there that are very similar to the arguments that were made before the collapse of or breaking up of Yugoslavia. And I think some of those same things in the Middle East, it's like, God, we've been doing this, I guess, forever in some ways, but I think it's the conversation is definitely different now. A lot of the same parties, some of the conversations are probably the same, but I think for us in the United States, it's a little different now, but or definitely for some of us.
We did get the seeds of the Dominion planted this season. We learned about the Jem'Hadar, and I don't think they mentioned the name, but the other alien species that was there in the Jem'Hadar are called the Vorta, who are you can see the differences between the Jem'Hadar being the military soldiers and the Vorta being more planners. But they mentioned in the episode that the Vorta are not in charge. It's the Founders that are in charge. I'm curious, because I think the Founders have been mentioned more than once. I think they were mentioned before this, but I'm just curious, Stephen, do you have any idea who the Founders are or what their race may be about from what you've seen so far?
No, I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with the current season of Discovery, but no, I don't. I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I mean, Vorta and Jem'Hadar are both foot soldiers to the real enemy.
I don't either, for what it's worth. It's just
you don't remember who the Founders are?
No, I don't think I got far enough into the series. I probably dropped off somewhere in season 3. I had to have, right? Or
even so, you didn't watch any of the war years?
No, I didn't get that. It's it was only when things were actually airing at the time, and
you didn't even get as far as Worf joining the crew.
I did get that far.
That's season 4.
Okay, so I don't remember anything that happened in between those times. I might have dipped in and out or something, or what? I'm not sure.
Pretty sure they reveal who the Founders are in season 3, but I could be wrong.
That probably wouldn't have registered it unless I was watching like week to week, which I must not have been, or I didn't catch the final details.
I feel like if you'd seen it, you'd remember. It's pretty memorable. It's not easily forgettable.
Yeah, I keep forgetting the Worf's coming. I'm like a goldfish. That's why everything's gonna be a great surprise for me.
Yeah. That's okay. We still have a whole nother season without him, so we've got some time. Although it's really funny because every time I think about DS9, I picture Worf in the cast, but he's only in a little over half the series.
Yeah.
So they certainly integrate him well when he gets there, but we'll get to that. Like I said, I like DS9 Worf better than Next Gen Worf in a lot of ways, but anyway. So I mean, it's the same character, it's the same actor, but they just write him better. Yeah. Which they write all the characters better on DS9.
He's already walking in fully developed, or at least developed after having gone through all of TNG, and now it's this is that.
He does have, and all that development counts, but I think they develop him further in new and interesting ways.
Right.
I think he gets more development in 4 seasons of DS9 than he got in 7 of Next Gen, honestly.
Yeah.
Although he got more development than most of the Next Gen main cast, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that also then raises the argument of whether it's just a sign of the times and so forth. You know, you get this is what I keep saying before about how it's hard for me to compare successive series and successive seasons of Star Trek, because the world is actually changing every time something comes out. And so you get, you know, people, the writing sensibilities change, the people's experiences, et cetera, et cetera.
You make a good point, because there's a small number of Next Gen characters that appear on Voyager as well, and I feel like they're better developed in Voyager in a handful of episodes than they were over a longer period in Next Gen. So you may be right in terms of the time changing and everything. Let's look at what our best episodes of the season were, see if they hold up as our top line. We put Blood Oath as number 1. That's our original series Klingons. Kind of hard to beat that. Below that's The Wire, then the Jem'Hadar, then Crossover, that's the Mirror Universe. Again, original series callback. Finally, The Collaborator. Right below that, honorable mention, I guess, is the Maquis Part 1 and 2. But what a run of good episodes, and I find it interesting that like the two that harken most back to the original series so far are up there. Like they did original series characters and story right, I guess. Yeah.
That actually goes to my point, what I was saying just then. It's I think a lot of these episodes where we see and bringing back original characters and giving them nods and so forth, it's better than just this is nostalgic. It is because they have better tools to use to showcase them. Better ways to.
Sure, the 3 Klingons got more development in this one episode than they got in their individual episodes in the 60s.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like the Collaborator and the Wire, we're talking about Cardassians, we're talking about Bajorans. So clearly those species and that stuff's resonating with us well. Jem'Hadar setting up the Dominion, which is going to be a major part of the series going forward. And then even the Maquis, which I guess we get introduced to in Next Gen, but DS9 gets a little more time with them. Just this idea of Starfleet being wrong is something I think Next Gen like teased a couple times briefly, but never really leaned into. And original series, you know, we have the admirals that ended up being the bad guys, right? But this is with the Maquis, we actually get a group of Starfleet officers, and we're told over and over again, like Ben Casey, Sisko's friend, that these are people we should respect and listen to. And yet they've come down on the opposite side of the question. And that's such an interesting concept. I do think, I wish we got more of the Maquis than we're going to get. I mean, Voyager has Maquis in them as well, but I still think it would be more interesting if they played them out. I do wonder if the Dominion hadn't come on the scene, if we would have spent a lot more time with the Maquis and DS9, but we'll still get some more Maquis stories.
That's an interesting way of saying that. If the Dominion hadn't come along, it almost makes it sound like the writers didn't have a choice. It's just sort of like, well, they just showed up, and
well, the Dominion are so dominating. The further you get in the series, they like really dominate almost every episode.
Yeah,
for a good reason. And when I picture a DS9 where the Dominion didn't come along and they had more time to explore the Maquis, it is a much tamer Deep Space Nine. It's a much slower Deep Space Nine. So I'm not saying it would have been good for the series to not have the Dominion come in. I think it's better we got more Dominion than we got Maquis. But the Maquis are a very interesting story, and I wouldn't mind some other... It's almost like the Dominion is Battlestar Galactica, and the Maquis storyline would have been the Caprica prequel. I really liked Caprica, but it was not as gripping and engaging as Battlestar Galactica. And I think those are the two storylines. Like the Maquis, it was so much more political in a way that was more talky than actiony. Whereas the Dominion ended up being a lot more actiony. And I like both. I really want my talky part of Star Trek, but when Star Trek is just talky, it needs the actiony to balance it out, right? Like we've also seen the opposite, where Star Trek got too actiony, but I want the balance.
Well, that's not quite what I meant, though. It's more, I've heard writers say this before. I'm saying this as if I've never written anything myself, but the idea of characters taking over what you end up writing, like you don't have a control over. Well,
yeah, that happens for me, for sure.
They could have just held off on the Dominion, or they could have done any number. There's a back, like you almost made it sound like there's like a backstage reason why. Well, the bosses came in. They said we had to do the Dominion now. We can't do anything about it. But
Think from the writer's perspective, once you set up something like the Dominion, it does kind of take on a life of its own. And if you want this threat to actually be real and you want it to have the weight that you've already set it up for, then you have to let them dominate. You have to let them take over the story. And I can easily see the way it goes that way. I'm not saying DS9 always makes the right choice, but I think they make the right choice a lot of times. And if you didn't let the Dominion grow naturally the way they're already on trajectory to, it would hurt the story.
I mean, it's in their name, Dominion.
True. It's true. They dominate.
I like that, you were talking about we keep meeting more Cardassians and Majorans. And I think it continues to be, as the more we learn, the more it's harder to be like, well, they're the Nazis and they're this person. There's more complexity there. And, what's the deal with Odo and Quark and some of these guys too? And, Kira's backstory. So I like, because we talked about, while we're talking about geopolitics on planet Earth, with TOS, we always talked about Federation's the US and Klingons are Russia and the Romulans are the Chinese, or however you wanted to arrange that. But it was definitely, US Federation, good guys, white hat. There was some, I shouldn't say it was always like that, but generally speaking, we knew who the good guys were, even if there were some Starfleet renegades here and there within there. Actually, all the Starfleet captains that tried to take over a planet. So there were definitely not everyone was perfect, but I think it's even more ambivalent. We don't know who's zooming who quite often. So, which again leads to surprises.
So, I mean, maybe they had different priorities, I guess. So you have the 60s and 70s, and it's just not just the 60s, right? Yeah. Anyway, yeah. They would have a certain way of looking at things and a different types of lessons they would want to teach, or that Roddenberry would want to teach at the time, I guess.
Roddenberry wasn't involved in the early development of the series, Deep Space Nine. That was the last kind of thing he worked on, but I don't feel like...
I'm talking about TOS.
Yeah, well, yeah, he had the defining voice in TOS.
Right. But okay, I see what you're saying as far as like the comparison, blah, blah. But I still think that there's something to be said for... I mean, there's a backdrop of what's happening in the world that's going to influence what people are going to want to talk about, or even be able to talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
So what was making me think about is what Stephen was saying about like the big powers. There's something more concrete you could point to at the time, as far as like an entire fact, Russia, China, or this or that.
Oh, right.
The world got a little more gray, less black and white.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to that the Berlin Wall fell, and that's where we were in the 90s. Yeah, things were. Russia wasn't the enemy anymore. They're back, obviously. But it was it got weird in the 90s in that sense. Mm-hmm. We found other enemies because that's what
we've talked about the best parts of the season. Let's look at the worst parts of the season. Starting at the bottom, our worst episode was Whispers. I don't even remember what Whispers was about, honestly. Chief O'Brien is ignored by his family and friends as being closed out of every... Oh, that's the one where O'Brien's suspected being a spy and they're all whispering behind his back. Yeah, that one wasn't great.
Yeah.
Above that's Melora, which wasn't a terrible episode, although it was still a little bit creepy Bashir. Above that was Paradise, Second Sight, and then Rivals. I liked Rivals. I feel like it's just the bottom Whispers that I didn't like in this season. Like, it was a pretty strong season overall. Too bad O'Brien got the worst episode.
Yeah, because even his Tribunal was the only one of the last 8 that was not in our top 7.
That's true.
It was still good.
I think it was still, yeah.
Yeah. We put about halfway through the season, but it was a strong season, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, any complaints about that bottom section?
No, I think that makes sense from what I can remember.
I am looking back and note that we lost Keith for like a quarter of the season right in the middle. So we didn't have his rankings in terms of annoyance and shady and drink for a bit. Looking for some common consistencies in here. I chose Dax like 6 or 7 times to have a drink with this season. So I definitely was leading the charge on that. I don't see anybody appearing as much in either of your two lists. I mean, Steven's got Bashir a couple of times, O'Brien a couple of times. We all chose Core for Blood Oath, so that's our across the board.
Which one was he in there? Or what role was he playing in that? I'm trying to like.
He was the drunk. No, he was. Wait, was he the drunk? Yes.
Yes,
he was. He was. Yeah, we had a lot of spread outness though. Like I chose Kira once or twice, Cisco twice, Bashir, Ducat, some Odo once, Quark once. Same thing with both of you. Like I see Quark, Miles, O'Brien. Steven chose Odo a couple times. But yeah, we really spread out a lot in terms of our drinks. We're not super consistent on the only Core we all lined up on, and we all lined up on Odo for the alternate. Looking at annoyance, I don't see. Oh, we all chose Fenna for Second Sight. Steven and I both chose Fake O'Brien and Whispers, and Toron in Profit and Loss. So I lined up a little closer on that. But I do see Steven chose Quark several times. Steven actually chose Garrick as an annoyance, which I'm still haven't forgiven him for. Probably never will. But not so much of the main characters. Like I did choose Bashir twice. I don't see him on Steven's list. Well, Bash O'Brien was one of his choices, but I don't see Bashir on Keith's list either. So clearly he's come back out, whereas the first season we chose him a lot. But yeah, Quark appears a handful of times, unfortunately. Odo appears a few times. But overall, less main characters appearing in that list. And then when we go to Shady, obviously we've got some Quark appearing. We've got some Ducat and Wynn and Jaro. That was Frank Langella. It was on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember. Yeah, Frank Langella. We all thought was, or not we all thought, but Keith had him for a couple episodes of Shady. I'd say where we agree, we all agreed Zek was Shady in Rules of Acquisition. We all agreed Paul Ra, Necessary Evil. We all agreed Nidrel and Second Sight. We agreed a lot more on the Shady than other choices. Alexis for Shadow Play, or sorry, for Paradise, Quark for Shadow Play. We all chose Kang for Blood Oath, and Garrick for The Wire, and Eris for the Jem'Hadar. So a lot of agreement on who was Shady. A lot of Shady people this season. But any other notes about season 2 before we move on here? Anything that stood out to you as trends or character things you wanted to mention? I am disappointed we never revisited Kai Apaka and her planet. I feel like that was a missed opportunity. Season 2 should have been the time to go back to that.
I think there was so much, I'll say, I used baked for lack of a better verb, but into that episode that it is amazing they didn't find a way to come back to it, but maybe they're just like, we don't want to reopen that can of worms, and hopefully everyone will forget about it. But it's out there. We keep remembering. We know it's out there.
Yeah. I'm just gonna assume probably Dominion destroyed that planet the way they did the other Bajoran colony that was mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to justify not going back to it. But what are you hoping to see, looking forward to in season 3? Any characters you want to see more of? Any plot lines you're excited about?
That planet you just said.
Sorry, Keith, it's not coming back.
All those things that we kind of pointed to earlier, the Maquis, Jem'Hadar, the association, the Dominion,
Jimmy-Jerome Mahadar.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff, and I guess like I said, beyond the goldfish thing, I think because with every episode of TNG, it's like, all right, it could be a planet of the week or that kind of thing. With this, it's there. I talked about how it's kind of Love Boat, and that people are coming to see them instead of them going to visit them. Although there's some of that too, obviously. But yeah, in my mind, and so I know we'll see, or I'll see. But so every week I don't really know, other than whatever you say in the synopsis the week before, and usually I forget that, especially if it reveals too much. I just drop it out. But I really don't know where it's going. I mean, unless it's a part 2. But otherwise, it's like, all right, where are we going this week? Is it Maquis? Is it somebody's ex-lover or whatever, which usually doesn't turn out well for anybody. But, so I think that's another thing that intrigues me. So, I think just, for the development of all that. So
Never knowing when returning things are going to pop up.
Yeah.
I can see that being an enticement.
Like, the other part of that, the opposite side of that is like, oh, you know what? This episode is just not even dealing with any of that. I guess what we call a bottle episode now. So
we're gonna get fewer and fewer of those on DS9 as it goes along.
I could see that. But
I think there's still some more in season 3, but like seasons 4 through 7 don't have a lot of those. Well, yeah, I guess the season 1 had more of those, right? Like we met this random Gamma Quadrant race. They're a hunter and prey. We never see them or hear about them. That kind of stuff's a little disappointing, but the stuff that is sticking, and we're going to see a lot more. So,
and it's very, very intriguing stuff. So,
yeah, I'm on board. Similar to you, I'm ready for the depth. We've already seen some depth, and I'm excited for some more depth on some of these characters and plot arcs.
Yeah,
and I'm ready for Cisco. I don't know if it happens in season 3. I can't remember when he changes his look, but I'm ready for Cisco to shave his head and grow the goatee. I'm ready for that. He looks so much cooler after that.
Yeah, forgot that was the thing.
Okay, well, we are taking our typical 6-week break. In the middle of that, we're going to drop a few bonus episodes. We're going to review the book Star Trek New Frontier, at least the first of the 4 novellas. That'll drop for free on the regular feed for everybody, but then we're going to hide behind a paywall. We're going to review some comedy sketches, Saturday Night Live, and some other stuff. We're going to review the pilot of Cop Rock, which we've referenced for a long time. So you're going to have to pay at patreon.com/IABD, just $5 a month. You get access to those and our past bonus episodes. They're Patreon exclusives. And then in about 6 weeks, we'll be back to start DS9 Season 3. I believe we have like 8 episodes of that, then the movie Star Trek Generations, then like 4 more before Voyager starts. So we're going to be knee-deep in DS9 for a while for the first half of the season. A lot of DS9 back to back, which I'm looking forward to. So until then, live long.
And I never thought I'd live long enough for us to get to Voyager and prosper.
Still got those 6 more months, Steve.
I'm still stuck on. I'm stuck on knee deep still. Just try not to get in over your waist.
It's true. We don't want DS9 to get it. We don't want DS9 to get up over our waist.
Yeah.
It's like quicksand. You can't go.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?